Data architecture. The survey data model expanded into dynamic forms. Welcome back to data architecture. In a past session, I built up from nothing and just a basic data model, surveys, going through the ability to take surveys and have dynamic questions. And then I mentioned that this was one of my favorite data models. And what I'm going to do is we're going to pick up where we left off with dynamic surveys, and instead we're going to turn them into dynamic forms. The ability to ask a series of questions on a set of pages and have conditional questions showing up. So one question can drive whether a second question is visible or not. And so this is really powerful. Once you start getting into this, the power really expands. So we're going to build this up, converting surveys to dynamic forms. So we're going to take a brief look at the previous data model, which had a requirement. We'll take a look at it right here. Record a survey. There can be 10 and growing surveys. Each survey has a question. Each response is on a 1 to 10 scale, and record the responses. Now we built that data model and we expanded it to have the ability to have questions across surveys, and we even expanded the responses to be response types of multiple data types, and we created the concept of response sets with response values. So what we're going to do is we're going to come here and convert this into dynamic forms data model. So to do that, we're going to change survey to form, and we're going to keep the concept of versioning because I think it's very important, a form version. And we went into detail in versioning in a separate video. And then we're going to have this, is called this a form response and a form response question. The actual names aren't important. You can fine tune them to your own implementation. Now, what we're going to enhance this. Instead of having survey question, we're going to create the concept of a form page. So now what we're going to be able to do is we're going to have questions will be on forms. Now here is an important concept. We want to have a question that can be only be shown based on the value of a previous question. So we're going to be implementing logic. And the way we're going to implement dynamic logic is we're going to model it after Salesforce. There's a really good model, and I've used this long before Salesforce, but it's very clean. We're going to look at a list view. And if you just look at a list view, we're going to go test, test. But what we're going to look at are the filters. So there's the concept of filters, and if you add one, you're going to have a field, operator, and a value. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to follow this paradigm. We're going to call this, where this question is going to then be dependent, is going to have a rule set. So it's going to be a set of rules. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a child object called a rule condition. And this will become a child object here. And now this question can be linked to the rule set. So what I've done is I've made the question, let's actually move these off to the side. We'll move this to the side. And what we're saying is a question can have a rule set. And this rule set will say whether it should be visible. This rule set will be a set of rules, just like this list view has a set of rules. And this rule condition will have a couple of fields. It's going to have a source, an operand, and a value. So this source can be the source question. So we can be basing this on a previous question. Is the value in a previous question? The operator will be a global pick list, which will have things like is equal to, is greater than, and the value could be a fixed value. We'll start with the simplified version of this. So now we have is a rule condition, and this allows us to model after field. This would be a pick list of existing questions. This would be a pick list of operators, and then we could put in a value. Now, we would need to know the sequence. So this will have a sequence field. And then there's something we could even do to handle more advanced logic is I could add filter logic where you would go 1 and 2 or 3. This allowed you to have conditional logic across multiple conditions. And then you could implement that by having a field called the filter logic. So now we could have a field set which can determine the questions. The questions would have a sequence, and they would live on a form page which had a sequence. Now, you could even, if you wanted to have a conditional page, what you could do is have another rule set, still use the same object, and link this rule object to the form page. And we won't worry too much about the arrows because it's dynamic. But this way, I could have a page that is visible or not visible based on a rule set. I could then have a number of questions that are visible or not visible based on a rule set. And these are where you could do important concepts such as somebody chooses a value, choose a value from a pick list. And then if they choose other, you could have an other field dynamically appear. So this allows you to have field level dynamic questions. It allows you to have specific forms that are dynamic and show. And all of this can be linked under a form version. So that way it's all woven together. So now we've got the ability for dynamic responses with response sets, dynamic rules, dynamic rule conditions, questions, and we still have kept fundamentally the same data model. So what we've done is we've taken our dynamic surveys and we've added just 2 custom objects, the rules and the rule sets and the rule conditions. We've then morphed the survey questions to pages. We've added conditional pages, and now we have a dynamic form builder which allows us to have multi-page forms with questions, dynamic responses, and have sequential questions that then drive to subsequent pages of questions. And I can even hide entire pages of questions. I've implemented this at many clients in Salesforce and in other platforms. I had one at a major US utility in Salesforce where we were having checklist forms for doing safety, and we were having these safety forms built in Salesforce, stored in Salesforce. We had multiple versions so we could go back years. So these dynamic forms can be implemented, and we did it with just a handful of extra objects. So this is a very powerful data model, and we may even take it further in another video where we go into a full configurator. Hope this was helpful, and use these ideas, recognize these patterns when you see them, and design them yourself when you need them. Thank you for joining Forming Forms. Join me same bat time, same bat channel. Subscribe to YouTube, SteveTechArc, and www.stevetecharc.com. Thank you very much. Have a great day.